Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patrick Lovell. I'm coming to you from my neck of the woods at about approximately 1 p.m. on, I guess it's Thursday, February 17th. Boy, we got a little bit of good news yesterday. I read in the New York Times that thanks to Operation Varsity Blues, a private equity guy and a casino executive were both convicted on charges of fraud by basically trying to get their kids into elite colleges by paying off a lot of money to middlemen to lie and deny and to try to skirt their kids in to places like USC, Stanford, and Harvard by paying a lot of money. In fact, the guy from the private equity guy spent $1.2 million to make this happen. And what they were trying to do was get their kids in on these elite athletic scholarships that they would otherwise not have been considered for if they didn't grease the palms of the guy, the dirtbag on the other side that was willing to do that. Think about the kids out there who sacrificed their life to work so hard to try to get an athletic scholarship. And with those particular universities, you would have to have obviously terrific grades at the same time, but they would be pushed out of the opportunity because of somebody on the inside that was corrupt. That's everywhere. And unfortunately, we're not seeing enough convictions of this thing or enough people understanding what's actually going on in society. I mean, this Operation Varsity Blues got some attention about 6 months ago. It might have even been a year ago. I think it was Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin were the two celebrities that were also indicted in this situation and convicted as well. But the private equity guy that got nailed, he's going to go to jail for 15 months. It might be club fed, but indeed 15 months of prison time for this. And at the same time, I think he had to pay $200,000 in fines. He's going to do 400 hours of community service. I think he had to pay another $90,000 to the IRS for some reason. And then I'm not sure what the terms were for the casino executive, but it was pretty interesting to me that it was a casino executive and a private equity executive, and then, of course, celebrities that were involved with this. I mean, the country is rotting from corruption. People should be outraged by this in terms of a country that's supposed to create dynamism and fairness and equal, accessibility and liberty and justice for all. This just destroys the credibility of all of that. In fact, I wish I would have known more about the guys who were, the inside guys that were actually doing this. I hope that their lives were ruined. I hope that they go to jail. I hope that their clawbacks and their money dissipates and everything else, because that would be some justice. But nevertheless, here we are, and the law and the legal system moves a lot slower than crime, and that's for damn sure. And I'm going to make this one short today because. A couple of other things that I was just absorbing earlier today was a great story that I saw from Crystal Ball, and she always nails it. But she was talking about the internal mechanics and the circus that was going on with the firing of Jeff Zucker at CNN as it related to Cuomo and their involvement in what was going on. And it turns out that they were basically involved with covering up what could have been a Me Too situation at CNN. And everybody was aware of it. And of course, a lot of people turned their heads. And then, of course, all of the executives, or I should say on-air personalities that we all know, were coming to the defense of the guy who was involved with this madness, right? So they're all against Donald Trump, for example, with everything he was involved with this type of behavior. But when it comes to their own, they protect. I mean, how incredibly hypocritical is that? Well, then guys like that guy, Brian Settler, I can't even pronounce his last name. He drives me nuts. He's been all over the place targeting Joe Rogan for whatever his spread of misinformation regarding COVID was. And then, of course, it led to this N-word debacle with the mashup. But it's all a circus. It's all high school. It's all ridiculous. And I have been trying to get your attention and the millions and millions of people that got destroyed by the 2008 great financial crisis, who were none the wiser, who never knew that they got set up, who never knew that they were basically on a machine that may as well have been chattel, leading the chattel to the slaughter. I mean, literally, that's what was going on because people just wanted to get their houses refinanced. They thought the terms were this and that, or they wanted to get into their first house. And then all of a sudden the economy goes catastrophic because everything, basically dissipates. And the next thing you know, the courts are sending everybody through the meat grinder based on paperwork and documentation fraud that never existed, so that the foreclosing parties actually never had standing to foreclose on the illegal loans that were written in the first place, but yet nobody was able to stop it. Because now, 10 years later, 11, 12 years later, I got all of these Twitter messages earlier today, and I have really for the course of the last many months where people want to tell me their story, and a lot of them are extraordinary, but they all start to sound the same. over and over. Their families were destroyed, divorces happened, suicides happened, and then people who actually lasted and went the distance, at the end, they get run over because the system is just that corrupt. And what people don't understand is what created that scenario in the first place, and then ultimately what the states did to cover this up, because of it always leads back to the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve literally stepped up and created liquidity in the marketplace to all of these corrupt actors in the financial industry, whether it was the too big to fail banks or if it was, everybody that kind of stems from that, from private equity to hedge funds and so on and so forth, where if the Federal Reserve didn't come up with this, emergency stimulus cash for liquidity, they couldn't do their tricks and everything that led to another many trillion since then that have created this world that we live in. What it is a smoke and mirrors scenario where free money goes into the bad actors who create this incredible diabolical scheme of fictional assets, and then they sell it right back to the government through what's known as quantitative easing. You take all of that stuff away, none of that happens. And all of that is basically what creates the power system and the vortex of this country, where the bad actors in the financial industry are at the apex of this whole situation, and they literally fund both parties. And so then as a result, you get this craziness. Nobody knows what direction is up. And ultimately, you get people that go through the court system who got so devastated, and they hate the Obama administration so much because they got wind of how all this stuff worked during that time period. But then they start to skew towards Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's been up to his eyeballs in this madness from day one. So they're going to support a guy that may have actually buried them. And if it wasn't them, it was somebody else. And then at the same time, he's going to lie, deny, switch the blame, and implicate and pretend. It's a mess. It's a complete unbelievable mess. And I was really decided to go, push click on this today because, I was a football player growing up, and I believed in, the best person getting to the best position. And, if they get, through the system, they can move up the system and so on and so forth. And then we see this glory like that happen in the Super Bowl with this guy, Cooper Kupp, for example, that is the personification of what I always thought the United States was all about. The best who work the hardest, that get their opportunities, that get their shots, and then glory happens, okay? Obviously not everybody's going to be a Super Bowl champion, but you create a very dynamic, robust a society if everybody is playing by the same rules. And you've got people who work really hard, that are very committed, that work through the system, that have an opportunity to succeed. That's what I thought the system was, but it's not. It's private equity guys and casino pit bosses that are actually paying, point people within these elite universities to, basically kick somebody who's more deserving of these scholarships to their kids because they're paying them off to do that. What are we, a third world country? Yeah, we are, and we will continue to be as long as you refuse to understand the facts. And I'm trying desperately to connect with everybody out there who either lost their home in 2008 and they probably walked away from it because they thought they couldn't afford to pay it back, but you still don't know that you were set up in the whole situation and how ultimately this system destroyed the United States. And then those of you who actually went through the system, I interact with many of you. I've probably interacted with you, over 1,000 of you over the last, I want to call it 6 years, that you get to a point within the courts where it's like, my God, I've gone through A plus Z. I mean, the most amazing revelations you could possibly imagine. And so many of you had to do this on your own because you couldn't afford an attorney. But then people start collectively talking together. And in the end, you really think that somebody is going to clean up the courts after all this time, when we all know that the judges are going to let one in, maybe let's call it 100, maybe 1 in 1,000 through to actually, go the right direction, when everybody else is going to be, foreclosed upon and kicked to the curb, and you're going to lose everything in the process, most particularly your mind. And then you're going to come talk to people like me, and you're going to tell me your story, and I've heard everybody's story. My story was very similar, and I've learned so much from so many of you. But in the end, you're going to lose. You're going to lose big because nobody knows what created the problem. I literally sat in on a video conference during one of these hearings where, one of the best attorneys that exist in this place was told literally by the judge that, you know what, if you were the United States government and you told me everything and provided me evidence of everything that you're talking about, then I'd listen to you. But you're not, so I won't. That's the reason we made the con, was to show what the United States government knew and what they didn't do in the aftermath, which led to this disaster where literally millions of us are none the wiser. We can't rise up as I don't know, man. We got to create a new push. I'm calling it the Great Resurrection. The Trump supporters try to create the insurrection. But at the end of the day, man, this isn't about red or blue. This is about corruption. We're all being destroyed. By corruption. Because if a system doesn't have integrity and it's corrupt, nothing else functions. And that's where we are. And I'm telling you, both parties are in on it. There's so much more to the picture than that, but you've got to understand the facts to even get on first base, let alone you get around all of the bases to come home to hit a home run, which would be to recreate our government, because the long and the short of it is this has got to be the end of an era, one way or the other. Even more of us go down because of this fictional economy that's created by the Federal Reserve into these bad actors that create this fictional scheme that they sell right back to the government. What a joke. What a betrayal of supply and demand. What a betrayal of life, liberty, and justice for all. What a betrayal of the integrity of law and nobody is above the law. It's a joke. All of it's a joke. And unless you know the facts, you can't get there. So please, check it out. Tell everybody you know. Go to www.thecon.tv. Send me your questions. Send me your responses. Send me your thoughts about what it is you saw in your own story. But at the same time, I'm urging you all to get on the same page. Once we all have the facts, I think collectively we could create a movement to actually move forward, because unless we know exactly who did what, when, and who covered it up, there's no way in hell we can challenge the corruption. Please wake up. Thank you. All the best.